In this video, we're doing midpoint Riemann sums, again using FRQ released questions. So pause and take a moment and read this question. Thank you for reading the question. So this is a topic about hot water dripping through a coffee maker. Let's skip down to our midpoint sum. So our midpoint sum has three subintervals, n is 3, of equal length, which is important for a midpoint Riemann sum from a table. And what we want to do is we want to approximate the value of 1/6 0 to 6 of c of t dt. Now that 1/6 is telling you that you have an average over time. So let's keep that in mind. So it says, using correct units, explain the meaning of, and then of course we're doing our midpoint Riemann sum. So if we're going from 0 to 6 and we only have 3 subintervals, then we're skipping by 6 minus 0 divided by 3 subintervals. So we're skipping by 2's, which means we're starting at 0 and going from 0 to 2, then from 2 to 4, then from 4 to 6. So all of those are skipping by 2. Now we want the midpoint. So we have to think, what's the midpoint between 0 and 2? Well, that would be 1. So the height we're using is 5.3. So our first midpoint rectangle would be 5.3 times 2. Next, we want the midpoint between 2 and 4, which would be 3. So the height we're using is 11.2, so 11.2 times 2 again, because we're still skipping by 2's. Third, between 4 and 6 would be 5, so our height is 13.8. We have 13.8 times 2. We're going to add all of that up, but then we have to divide it by 6 because of the multiply by 1/6. Again, if they give you a calculator, then put it in your calculator. If not, you'll have to calculate that by hand. Using correct units, explain the meaning of this. So this is the average change over the time frame 0 to 6 in ounces of the coffee. So let's see how AP would score that. We get 1 point for the midpoint sum, so that would be 1 point there. 1 point for the approximation. 1 point for the interpretation, average amount of coffee in the cup in ounces over the time interval. Let's do another problem. Take a moment and read the question. Thank you for reading the question. So this time the topic is a rocket with velocity. So now we're thinking in terms of velocity. And notice the table goes from 0 to 80, but our question is from 10 to 70. So they're trying to trick us right off the bat. So we should start by looking at how many subintervals there are. There are 3, so n is 3. So remember, b minus a over n is what you're going to skip by. So if we go 70 minus 10 over 3, we're skipping by 20s. So we would start at 10 and go to 30, 30 to 50, 50 to 70. Those are all skipping by 20s. We got a midpoint Riemann sum, so the midpoint is 20. So we would use 22, we would use 35, and we would use 44 because those are the midpoints. So we have 22 times 20 plus 35 times 20 plus 44 times 20. Now notice this time they did not say the word average. There's no fraction in front, so we don't have to find any average. We do need to talk about the meaning. So this is the average change in the distance over the time frame from 10 to 70 in feet. Let's take a look at how AP scored this one. Again, 3 points. So we've got the distance in feet traveled by the rocket from 10 to 70. So 1 point for the explanation. Our Riemann sum, so 1 point here. Notice they factored out the 20. You don't need to, but you may. And then 1 point for the value.